Welcome to Dr. B.R. Ambedkar Open University Distance Program. I am Kedareshwari here to tell you about the history of museum movement in India. I have worked in museums all over. I have worked in international museums, national museums, state museums, district museums and site museums. So, getting an overall picture of these museums, I have drawn this story for you. Now, what do I mean by history of museum movement in India? The history of museum movement in India is largely unwritten. Nobody has written this history yet. But what I present to you today is drawn from the chronological order in which museums were set up. Previously, we used to talk of 5 phases. V means whenever I gave talks or lectures, I always used to say 5 phases are there in the history of museum movement in India. But today I have added one more phase and hence I say it is 6 phases. What are the 6 phases? Do you mean to say that we never had any museum or society running a museum before that? Yes, we did have. Closer to the home, we had the Rajamundry Society, which ran a small collection as a museum during the freedom struggle movement. But what I am explaining here about the phases is the official museum movement. What is the first phase? It is called the establishment of Asiatic Society. We have taken this phase as 1784. 1784, the Asiatic Society was set up in Kolkata by William Townsend Jones during Warren Hastings' time. And this phase continues till 1857. During this phase, a number of museums sprouted. In fact, the Archaeological Society of India was already set up by the English colonial rulers, and the archaeology, when they were working, a lot of members came up. Antiquities came up. And 1857, why is it so important? Because 1857 was the turning point of our freedom struggle. It was the first battle in 1857 that was fought. It started in Meerut and it continued and flowed till Hyderabad via Delhi, Lucknow, and this phase is very important. 1857, the European historians have termed it as the first mutiny. And what does the Indian historian talk about? He calls it the first war of Indian independence. Rightly so. What did the Europeans do? What did the Europeans do? They squashed totally the freedom fighters, calling them mutineers, and then they very cleverly got this recorded through lithographs, aquatints and various prints in different media. And these prints tell us about the 1857 war from the Western point of view. And who assisted them in making these prints? It was our Indian artists who remained anonymous. Indian art is always anonymous. We strive for excellence in art. We don't strive to portray ourselves. So, 1784 to 1857, this phase is generally called the first phase of the museum development. The second phase is the initiative of the princely states. 1857 to 1898, a number of royal families started collecting. Started collecting what? Started collecting paintings, started collecting sculptures, garden sculptures. From where did they come? The East India Company had these various art schools running in India. And India was just not an imperial colony for just tea and other things. No, it was also for art. all the amateur artists, whatever they prepared was shipped to India. And after the art colleges were finished with them, because they were used as models, the princely families bought them over. So, India supported the imperial art also indirectly. And this rulers, whom I call the compradorial class, what did they do? They filled their households in different auctions were held, and they filled it up. And I can name one person closer to home, Salar Jung family. They also acquired a lot through these auction houses. So, this initiative was taken by them either to please the rulers, colonial rulers, or because they had a taste for rich heritage, art, especially visual art. A lot of prints also came to India, prints by Western classical masters. And then what happens? These doors were closed to the common people, not open to the common people. This is only, as I told you in my previous chapter, restricted, viewing was restricted to the aristocracy and the nobility and their family and their friends. So, that is the initiative which I call of the princely states. Later what happens? What is the next phase? The next phase is the official initiative. Officially, museums started getting opened up from 1898 to 1928. I have explained the details in your textbooks. Kindly refer to your textbooks. Next was the period of popular participation. The freedom struggle was catching on. People were ignited by spirit of patriotism and nationalism, and that is how different societies came up with their museums between 1928 and 1947. This is a very, very important phase because it was in 1921 that the Victoria Memorial was opened. Why do you call it the popular participation? Because the Victoria Memorial is located in a 64-acre garden, and public funding enabled Lord Curzon then to construct this memorial. Similarly, closer home in the public gardens, Amebag, the State Museum came up. Now we refer it to as Dr. Rajashekar Reddy Memorial Museum, but it was called the Hyderabad Museum, opened by the Nizam himself. I will be coming to these details soon. Such museums sprang up all over India. And then from 1947 onwards, the museum movement saw new trends. New concepts came up. And finally, the virtual museum, the digital museum. You must have observed that in the G20 summit which took place at Delhi recently, we had a digital museum giving the visitors a history of our democratic heritage. Apart from that, we had a cultural corridor which gave the background of the heritage, cultural heritage, tangible, intangible, of all the countries, 20 countries which participated in the G20 summit. So, now let us move on. When was the first museum established in India? The first museum was established in 1814. Was it directly established? No. The collection began Asiatic Society in Kolkata by William Townsend Jones and Warren Hastings, and they started collecting everything pertaining to archaeology, anthropology, zoology, ethnography, etc. In 1814, when the Indian Museum was constructed and completed, this collection was shifted to the Indian Museum. Nathaniel Walwick was the first curator. He was a botanist, and he started opening up the collection to the public under his guidance. Where was this Indian Museum? It's on Chowrangi Road. When you visit Calcutta, make it a point to see it. It is the first museum of India and the first largest museum. In fact, today also it is the largest, it has the largest collection, and the 7th museum chronologically in Asia to be set up. So, it has a very important collection, and for those of you interested in mummies, it has a mummy too. Do you all know another thing? The State Museum, what I refer to now as the Dr. Rajashekar Reddy Memorial Museum, also has a mummy in its collection. There is a mummy gallery which I commissioned when I was the director, explaining mummification, explaining the river Nile, and explaining all the pyramids and where the mummy was discovered. You must go and see it. And there is a lovely souvenir I have, designed for you all. It's in the shape of a pyramid. If you open the pyramid, you'll find a mummy there. You can use it as a bookmark, and the history of mummification and the pyramids is also given. What is a mummy? What is a pyramid? What is it? It's life after death, it explains. A very interesting concept. We do have our own philosophy, Hindu philosophy of life after death, but this was the Egyptian philosophy. Now, coming back again to our subject, from Asiatic Society, the collection, I repeat, was transferred to Indian Museum in a building which was totally Palladian in style. It was constructed with pillars, Palladian structure, architectural style was Palladian. What do I mean by Palladian? Palladian was the architect who introduced this style back home in London. And the colonialist, whatever style was prevailing back home, would adopt it in their colonies, not just in India, in all their colonies. So, you have a similarity in these constructions. If you ever see the town hall of Calcutta, or you see the Asiatic Society of Mumbai, or you see the British residency here, which is now a university, Mahila University, the construction is similar. It was Palladian. So, in all their colonies, even in Singapore, it is a town hall. So, all their colonies adopted the style which was being supported back home in UK. So, that is how we got a museum in a Palladian structure. The metro rail runs just in front of it. So, if you ever travel by metro in Kolkata, you can appreciate that huge construction. Beautiful building, it has got a grand stairway, and it has got a beautiful portico. I will be showing you the pictures of it soon. And this museum started operating. It has got a huge collection, very big collection, as I already told you, almost 2.5 to 3 lakhs or even more. What was it called? Was it called a museum? No, it was called a Ajaib Ghar. Ajaib hai, because people are not used to museums. अरे ये कहाँ क्या है इसमें, डायनासोर का स्केलेटन है, ये है, वो है, सब. So they called it Ajaib Ghar, house of curios. From Ajaib Ghar, we have travelled a long way and we have reached this millennium. And from it's a long way, and it's important to understand, it's very important to understand why museums should remain true to their functions as custodians and presenters of cultural property. Now it has become all the more important. I in fact term all the curators working in the national museums, state museums as the cultural ambassadors of this country. Though we have a Ministry of External Affairs, but the real cultural ambassadors are the people who are the custodians of these artifacts, antiquities, who understand their importance and who can project very good historical information which helps the visitor to understand how great our civilization has been. For example, at the Salarjung Museum, artifacts represent almost 52 countries. So, if you do not have time to visit the world, visit Salarjung Museum. You can see artifacts from different countries, from Far East, South Asia, West and Indian. So, museum is one place which you should consider as lifelong centers of education. You can go at any time. A child can learn adults can learn, students can learn, researchers can learn, and the importance of museums has recently become more significant because visitors who visit them are curious about other countries. This importance is also due to the development of technology. Sitting at home, you can access a museum, isn't it? Virtual museums, digital museums, and the Jatan I told you about, opened by Ministry of Culture, where they have uploaded all the information related to objects. You can learn about objects, you can write an article, and now let us move further. So what this exposure, what happens when you get this kind of an exposure to our cultures and to various cultures, it helps, it plays a very significant role in the process of shaping your national identity. You become a true Indian. Your national identity is confirmed. You can talk about your nation, and then you can become harbingers. So, museums are harbingers of global peace and harmony. The recent G20 summit also proved that. Have you all seen how they were all taken to Rajghat? How they all paid their respects? They were all given a Indian textile, a stole as a gift. I felt great peace viewing that certain clip on the news in a TV channel, and what the countries would have felt, that this is what we are fighting for, peace. And this kind of peace, what helps people to understand peace? It is our traditions, it is our practices, it is our civilization. Gandhiji just has asked people to follow the path of ahimsa and peace, and that is what our Prime Minister has projected to the entire 21 countries who have visited and attended the G20 summit. Now, what happens in the 20th century? I'm talking of the last century. What happens? A number of museums, memorials with various aims, objectives, and collection mushroomed and blossomed in every government and non-government institutions, private and corporate sectors, teaching institutions like universities, colleges, schools, heritage structures, and palaces. The 21st century witnessed a further sprout of museums and art spaces in cultural centers and corridors. Public areas like airports, rail and metro stations to display visual art, display three-dimensional objects. But what do we think of open air museums? Was this museum concept new to us? No. We had open air museums even then. What is a museum? What did I say? We convey messages, we convey historical information, we convey contemporary social, religious pictures, panoramas, economic, what was the economic profile of that particular period. But let me talk about these edicts, the most important edicts we have of Ashoka, who after Kalinga gave up war. So, the war is mentioned in the 13th rock edict of King Ashoka, and most of his rock edicts are in Pali language. They were found in various places like Ujjain, Sanchi, Sarnath, Sopar, Junagadh. And what are these edicts? They talk about the war, they talk about the kind of destruction it brought about, they talk about the change which Ashoka went through. He gave up war after Kalinga, he took to Buddhism, and he started spreading the message of brotherhood and peace. And these were displayed in important junctions for people to read and to understand. So, these rock edicts some of them have been shifted to museums, like you can find some in the National Museum and some other museums, for preservation's sake, so that the weathers, the vagaries of weather don't erode these rocks. And these I term as open air museums. The next example is this BRAOU railings. What is a BRAOU railing gives us? It gives us, what is this? You can see a torna, you can see a gate. It's the eastern gate of BRAOU stupa, and it gives you this contemporary social, religious, economic, cultural ethos of the place. This is the BRAOU gallery in Indian Museum. So, if you go to Calcutta, you must see this Indian Museum, you must see these railings, centuries old, and belief that they held in the faith of our Indian religions. Now, I was telling you about Indian Museum, Kolkata, isn't it? So, I have got 3 pictures for you, and this is the Palladian structures talking about. On the right, you can see the pillars, and inside is the portico. This portico is used as a cultural space. I will be showing you pictures about this also. And this cultural space, which why do I term it as cultural space? Where cultural events take place. It may be by a roadside. It may be all these Durga Puja which we have, that is also a cultural space. That is also a beautiful memory you take home, though just temporary for 3 days from Shashti to Vijayadashami, yet it is a cultural space. Why? Because it portrays the culture of Bengal, the rich culture, the rich heritage and intangible culture, tangible and intangible. Why intangible? The dhakis play the drums for the mother. Then you see the mother with her Saraswati, Lakshmi, Ganesha, Kartik, with all their vehicles. The world over talks of this day, that day. We celebrate through our faith every day, every celebration is special for us, and we celebrate every day. Our culture and our traditions are inbuilt within us and our households, and this portico is used for portraying the rich cultural heritage, tangible and intangible, of West Bengal and other states too. Now we come to Victoria Memorial Hall, Kolkata. 1814 was Indian Museum. Then after that, 1921, what happens? 1906 onwards, Lord Curzon thinks of paying homage to his empress, Queen Victoria. If Shah Jahan could build the Taj Mahal with Makrana marble in Agra, Curzon thought along the same lines. If that was for love, this was for loyalty. The Victoria Memorial was built by Lord Curzon. The idea was, whose idea? His idea. Who contributed? The Indian public. Where was the marble brought from? Makrana, the same place as for Taj Mahal. But what is the difference between Taj Mahal and Victoria Memorial Hall? The Taj Mahal is an absolute gem of Islamic architecture, the minarets, the domes, etc. And what is Victoria Memorial? It is a beautiful example of Indo-Saracenic architecture. He has taken elements from different Hindu architecture. You have all the rivers of India portrayed in the spandrels of this structure. You have got the dome. You have got the Angel of Victory on top. Why Angel of Victory? Please remember, it was only early 20th century. The English didn't doubt that they would be compelled to leave our country. So, that was the Angel of Victory. And Victoria Memorial, how was it visualized? It was visualized as the national Valhalla of the British Raj. So, what does this memorial portray? As the name suggests, it portrays details about the Queen's life, Queen Victoria's life. It's got a beautiful central hall. We have got a more than life statue there on display right in the center, which shows her in all her regal paraphernalia, and from then onwards it is the story of the Raj. Then next, what did Curzon do? He started collecting for this memorial. Though he left India afterwards, this was opened to the public in 1921 and most of the collection was acquired by Lord Curzon himself. It has got the best of Thomas and William Daniel collection. It has got the best of European artist collection, both professional and amateur. Apart from that, the museum holds a very good library, very good archive, and it's got a number of plans and maps with it which portray the development of Calcutta right from the fort area to the present times. This has two corridors on the east and the west where various functions are held. The gardens are a feast to the eyes. It is about 64 acres of greenery with four beautiful ponds, and this is a heaven because it is one of the lungs that Calcutta has with all the pollution we have, and people visit this memorial not just for its collection but also for its gardens. Now, it is open to morning walkers also. So, you see the role that this memorial is playing now. It is not just for the collection, it is also because it is a lung space for the city, people come here. In fact, I would be failing if I say that it is a heaven for lovers also. We find a lot of romantic couples under the trees in the gardens. This was a structure which was soon opened. It is called now the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj Vastu Sangralaya, but previously it was called the Prince of Wales Museum. Why Prince of Wales Museum? Because it was to commemorate the visit of Prince of Wales who laid the foundation for this particular museum, and this was also open to the public later. Now, let me come to this museum, which is very close to my heart because it was built by Mir Osman Ali Khan, the 7th Nizam of the Asafjah dynasty. Remember, I told you about the jewels who kept them, Nizam 7th kept them safe. It is the same Nizam who built this museum. He built this structure designed as a museum and he left a plaque in silver, which is very heartwarming and relevant even today. He presented a clock, his self-portrait and this plaque, and the plaque says, "Today I inaugurate this gallery and I hope it moves with time." I am not quoting directly. It moves with time and developments. So, look at his vision. He meant that he wished and envisioned the museum to develop as technology develops, as display systems develop, as communication systems develop. This museum has got one of the richest collection of miniatures, manuscripts and most importantly coins. It is the second largest collection of coins in the world after the British Museum. So, that is how our Hyderabad Museum then, now Dr. Rajashekar Reddy Memorial Museum, is rich. It stands alone in Bagh-e-Am. Footfalls are disappointing, but the collection is unique because the Nizam himself collected. It displays some of the finest statues, some of the finest inscriptions in stone, and most importantly, it displays the eye copies of Ajanta and Ellora temples. The Nizam's vision was so wide that he got eye copies made and they are displayed here. He also got eye copies of wall paintings from Iran, and these are also displayed here. It is called Chehel Satoon, the palace. I visited the palace. The paintings on the walls, the frescoes are affected, but the eye copies in the museum are intact. So, perhaps if the Iranian government ever wants to restore those paintings, they could refer to these eye copies to see details. So, that is how important this museum is. It has got a very large collection of cannons. I opened the cannon gallery, displayed in the courtyard, explaining the history too. So, do visit the Ame Bagh museum and appreciate the history, the wars that these cannons, witnessed. It is said that when a cannon is taken for a battle, a bottle of wine is also poured through the cannon for good luck. And there is a sacrifice that takes place too, though I do not support sacrifices, yet that was a tradition. And hauling these cannons to different battlefields, they have got very romantic names too. There is a descriptive catalogue which I have published about the cannons, about the collection, small pocket friendly catalogues. You can ask for them at the museum, it is only ₹20. So, please do visit this museum. The next museum which comes up is that in Mayo College, Ajmer. It was a museum for the school set up in 1948, and they have also brought out a stamp commemorating this Mayo College, Ajmer. Next one, we finally come to the Salarjung Museum, Hyderabad, a national museum under the Ministry of Culture, Government of India, which represents artifacts from 52 countries and a vast library and a manuscript section. This is the Maharaji Sayaji Rao University in Baroda. It is here that the first premier Department of Museology was opened way back in 1951. These are the Qutub Shahi tombs. There is a site museum here which tells you about this royal necropolis of the Qutub Shah dynasties. This is Muhammad Quli Qutub Shah, who is called the founder of Hyderabad. He built the Charminar and he prayed to God, look at his vision, fill this city of mine with different fish as you have, with different people as you have filled the ocean with fish. This is the National Museum, New Delhi, set up in 1945. This is a Parliament Museum set up in 2008. This is the National Museum of Indian Cinema. All of us love cinema. Please do visit it in Mumbai. There on the left you can see Satyajit Ray, one of the greatest filmmakers. There is the Indian Music Experience, Bengaluru, on musical instruments. And this is a museum on toilets, which traces the history of sanitation and toilets. And this is the National Council of Science Museums, 25 branches across the country, set up by the Ministry of Culture for the benefit of the visitors, students and researchers. Vishveshwaraya Industrial and Technological Museum, the Rail Museum, New Delhi. Children would love it, so would students. Please visit. And then there are so many museums in Red Fort. Did you know? There is archaeological museums, the Indian War Memorial Museum, the Subhash Chandra Bose Museum, Yad-e-Jalian, Museum of 1815, Drishya Kala, Azadi Ke Diwani. And this is Mumtaz Mahal Palace, where the archaeological museum is opened. This is the Jallianwala Bagh Memorial Museum. The narrow entrance, this is the place where 28 bullets were, are exhibited with an marked with a white paint. This is the memorial. This is the well where when General Dyer started ordering for shooting, people had nowhere to go, the entrance was narrow, they jumped into this well. And the Partition Museum, which tells you the sad stories of partition of India. And then Shaheed Bhagat Singh, they may kill me, but they cannot kill my ideas. They can crush my body, but they will not be able to crush my spirit. And there we have Lala Lajpat Rai saying, हमारे ऊपर किया गया हर अत्याचार ब्रिटिश साम्राज्य के ताबूत की कील साबित होगा. Then this is the museum in the airport, Jai Hind Museum, the airport museum, and the G20 summit, which I already explained, the cultural corridor, the G20 digital museum, which throws light on the heritage of member nations and invitee countries. The Bharat Mandapa is hosting a number of exhibitions showcasing our country's unique culture and heritage, both tangible and intangible. And most important, Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. It is mentioned in the Maha Upanishad, Hitopadesha and other literary works, and our motto, our mantra for the G20 summit was this. This is how we have portrayed our rich, tangible, intangible culture to the nation, or to the nation and to all the visiting dignitaries and countries.